She started out as an RN in pediatric intensive care, sorry for that microphone, in 2008. And she joined the School of Nursing faculty in 2015. She has her master's in nursing education and her doctorate in nursing here from UMC. Research interests focus on environmental factors that potentially increase the risk for patients in Mississippi to be diagnosed with specific health outcomes. So she apparently has been great at getting her abstracts accepted at places, and so we're really excited to learn from her about how to do that. So, Dr. Hall?
Are you fixing it? Okay, so I'm not buzzing the whole time. All right, guys, so I'm going to share my screen. I hope that you guys can see this online. You are not, all of you lovely people that are joining us online are not visible to me. So if you have a comment or a question, please stop me because I can't see anything that you are doing without turning around and looking backwards. And I don't want to look backwards because I want to look at you great people in this room. So I am excited that I'm here. So I really do believe that my name probably was just put in like a fishbowl of who wants to give a lunch and learn topic and then like shook up and then like pulled out of a hat. I know I have a few people who probably name dropped my name, and I have already had conversations with them. But I'm happy to tell you everything I know about writing an abstract. And for those of you online, majority of you are probably faculty, and I'm excited that you are joining with this lovely group of PhD students in front of me because we have this great research day coming up, and we have opportunities to showcase all the good things that we are doing. And we need to be showcasing all the good things we're doing. So get your pens ready to write an abstract. So by the end of this talk, I just want to go over the basic elements of an abstract. There are probably several of you who are either online or in this room that are like, okay, I've maybe read one, but don't really know what all goes into an abstract. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the call for an abstract and why those are so important that you read them and read them again and read them a third time and include everything that is in that call. And then we're going to end by going over some common mistakes and some takeaways, some tips to help you get an abstract written and proofread and submitted so that way it can be accepted. So I've already said this word a few times, but some of you are probably like, what is she talking about? So when we talk about an abstract, I want to clarify that it is just summarizing the major aspects of the entire paper in a prescribed sequence. Okay, so when I think of an abstract, I think of a snapshot, hence my picture of a camera on here. It is a snapshot of the overall project. Okay, it is a way that you have concisely and succinctly communicated what you have done, whether it be a huge research study, a huge quality improvement study, or whether it's a simple concept analysis. And by simple, I do not mean simple because those are not simple. But whether it is getting your point across, it is getting it across in a succinct way. Okay. One of the things I think about when I think of an abstract is it is your first impression. And when I think of a first impression, I often think of my husband, which many of you in this room do not know. He obviously left a good first impression on me. But one of the things he really likes to do is look at houses. We love our house. We love our neighborhood. And I have no desire to move houses. But he loves looking at houses. And so about every day, I've gotten 2 this morning already, I will get a Zillow link that tells me, hey, look at this house. Look at this property. Look at this. And when I click on it, the first thing I see is a picture of the front of the house with the yard. Okay, so it's manicured. It's got the shrubs that are done. It's got rocking chairs with pillows. You don't want too much on the door because you want them to see how the sunlight goes into the house. It is a good first impression. And if I don't like that first picture, I'm not going to want to go see that house or see what's inside. Okay, an abstract is the exact same way. It is a good snapshot first impression of what you have been working so hard on, so that way you draw people to want to come inside to see that pretty kitchen, that backyard, that master bathroom, all those kind of things. So abstracts are really important. Now, why do we write abstracts? Okay, There are several reasons that we write abstract, but two of the most common places that we see abstracts written are for the dissemination of your work, either in a journal or at a professional conference. Okay? When you submit an abstract to a journal with a manuscript, an editor is looking at that to see, is this even going to meet the requirements of my journal? Do my people, my audience need to know that? Or if people are searching the literature to try to identify literature to support what you want to do for your study, you're going to go and you're going to go out to all these sources and you are going to read your abstract, right? You're not going to read the whole article at first. So a lot of times abstracts are typically associated with journal articles or manuscripts. The second place that we see you disseminate your work is at a professional conference or a research day coming up, right? I kind of put those things together because those are both very similar. You are trying to network with people and you are trying to disseminate your work that you have worked so hard on. And when you write an abstract for a conference, typically that is you requesting to either present a poster or a podium at one of those conferences. So when you submit to SNRS or to this research day, you're not going to tell the planning committee everything you're going to talk about. You're going to give them that good snapshot, that good first impression, so that way they want you to come tell the entire conference the big picture and everything else you have. I put some other opportunities on here for you to write an abstract that you guys may be have the opportunity to do. The first one is when you want feedback or for future ideas. When you are working with faculty or when you're working with other researchers, just trying to give people an idea of what you're doing. It could be a quality improvement project. It could be an evidence-based practice project. It could be a research project. No matter what you're doing, you always don't have an hour or 2 or 3 to sit down and tell somebody every single piece of your project, right? You want to kind of give them an overall snapshot so they have the idea so they can kind of give you feedback and know what kind of questions to ask. So typically when you give them some information, you're not going to provide them with a 27, 28, 29-page document and say, please read this. You're going to give them an abstract. So that is another opportunity. It's when you're wanting feedback from a project you're working on, or, hey, I'm doing this. Can you give me some ideas for the future, how we can improve this to make it better? And then abstracts are always good for networking. You can read somebody's abstract and you can see who's doing what that's related to the research you're doing, so that way you can partner up and there's always moving in the future to continue to collaborate and network with those people. So a call for an abstract is a great first place to start. When you have a call, that gives you all the information about what you need to submit in that abstract, right? So what is the purpose of the meeting or the journal that you're trying to submit this abstract for? For example, I have worked with some faculty here at the School of Nursing related to simulation in pediatrics to supplement some clinical hours, okay? I'm not going to write that abstract and submit it to an epidemiology journal, okay? Because that's not the purpose of that journal. That journal would laugh and say, I'm so sorry, we are not interested in this at this time, okay? The same is true. I would not try to go and submit my dissertation manuscript related to environment and healthcare and congenital heart defects. I'm not going to submit that to a simulation journal, okay? That purpose of that journal or that conference, they don't match, okay? So you always want to make sure that you look at the intended purpose of that meeting to make sure it fits, okay? The second thing you want to know is who's going to be your audience. If you're a nurse doing nursing research, presenting nursing outcomes, then you need to make sure that that audience is nurses or are nurses, okay? But if you've got an interprofessional group of people and you go in there and talk about nurses the whole time, everybody in that audience is not going to be able to get something from your talk. So you want to make sure you know who your talk is. Like today, I'm talking to students and I'm talking to faculty members. I need to be sure that I can guide you guys as students into writing an abstract, as well as these faculty members who were trying to beef up y'all's scholarship role as well here at the school. So you want to make sure you know who your audience is that you're talking to. Also in the call, there are going to be lots of guidelines that you just want to make sure you carefully read. Things such as what type of studies are accepted. Does it have to be original research? Can it be a case study? Can it be ongoing research, or does it have to be completed at the time of submission? Can it be a review? There are some places that do not allow you. I know SNRS, when I first started, I was so excited. I was working on my systematic review, and they have in big bold letters, do not submit reviews. And I'm like, no, I don't have anything else to submit. So you want to be sure that you hit the type of submissions that they are looking for. And then what's the required format? Is it a structured abstract, which we're going to see some of those in this presentation, or is it unstructured? Structure meaning that they want you to tell background, write it. Methods, write it. That it's very structured. Unstructured would be like a paragraph. Just give me a paragraph form. What's the character limit? That's something we have to remember as we're writing those abstracts. If my character limit's 300, I can't be at 310, okay? A lot of these things are electronic now. If you're submitting these abstracts, you got to make sure you meet those format requirements. And then a lot of professional conferences, and I put this last one on here for a majority of your conferences, when you submit an abstract for a poster or a presentation, they will have review criteria available online. So that way you know exactly how you are being judged, okay? As a faculty member, I appreciate that because I love a rubric. Okay, rubrics are my friend. And so when I'm writing something, I want to write to get the highest score in that rubric. So if there is a review criteria available, please make sure you look at that when you're submitting it. Now, I did put 2 little slides in here as a plug for our research day because it is coming in March 31st. If it's not already on all of your calendars, please make sure it's there. But you see in the call that came out from the committee who's putting this research day on, they put the purpose. They laid it out clearly. They are looking for abstracts that address the significance and best practices for integrating research into clinical practice to foster positive health outcomes. So what this is looking at is best practice and research for health outcomes, okay? We want to focus on, what can we do to improve the health of a patient. It gives you formatting information, such as your abstract needs to be 300 words total, so you want to make sure that you stick to that limit. Describing your research or other scholarly work that emphasizes, with emphasis on integrating this into nursing practice, into your practice, okay? So there in the call, we see our purpose and we see, some of our formatting. The other thing that we see in this call is that they are allowing multiple different types of studies to be submitted. So it can be data-driven abstracts. So if you've gone out, collected data, gotten data, all this good stuff, they want those, okay? That's one type of submission they are looking for. But that's not the only type of submission. If you don't have data, doesn't mean you can't come and be a part of this research day, okay? They're looking for scholarly projects, case studies, quality improvement projects. They're also, if you keep coming down here to see, they're looking at works in progress, literature reviews, conceptual models, okay? So if you guys are starting in this PhD program, you're just beginning to conceptualize what the big picture is for y'all. And they're still wanting that. We still want to get that and to show that, and that would just go under Format C. Now, I will say for the purpose of this slide, I minimized it, but under every one of these formats on the email that came out from Dr. Conkle Parker, it has listed, it is a structured abstract. So they want you to tell them what's the background, the methods, the results, and the conclusion, and what that means for each of those sections, okay? I just copied, I cut some of it for the purpose of this, but there are different set of criteria that would go under Format B and Format C, okay? So just be sure to look at that when you're submitting, because that tells you exactly what that planning committee is looking for. Okay, so we've talked a lot already about kind of the structure. Now let's talk about what is an abstract, okay? What all goes into the meat and the bones and the makeup of the abstract. That needs to be very thorough and concise, but it's got to include a lot of things in the meantime, okay? So those things don't always go together when you think about concise, but I got a lot of little checks and balances I got to hit along the way. So we're going to start with the title, okay? Your title is your first impression. I won't say how many of you. One of the things I love to do at night is go home, eat dinner, of course, because I like to eat. I like to put my little girls to bed, and then I love a night where I don't have to do any more work after that. And I get to sit on the couch, and I get control of the remote, and I turn on the TV, and I hit that info button, and I just scroll titles, right? I don't know what any of these shows are about, but if that title doesn't catch my attention, I'm going to keep on scrolling, okay? The same thing is true with abstracts. You want your title to catch somebody's attention. If you are, for journal articles and manuscripts, when you are doing a lit review and you're trying to find information to support whatever research you're doing, you'll kind of go to CINAHL or PubMed and you'll type in a few keywords and then all these articles will come up, right? And what do? You're skimming the titles for keywords, for things that catch your attention. And if it doesn't catch your attention, you're not going to read further, okay? The same thing is true here. You want your title to catch somebody's attention. That is also very true at conferences. When you go to a conference, you get that program guide, and you start circling the titles that look interesting and the times where you maybe could take a nap or go shopping or, catch up on some emails or something like that, right? So, and if those titles don't catch your attention, you're not going to go, and you may miss out on something great, but that title didn't seem like it was going to be something great, okay? So the same thing is true for you guys as you're developing your abstracts. You want your title to be very clear to the reader what you're talking about, but also relevant. And when I say relevant, use relevant words that people know, that connect to people, so they can say, yeah, I need to go listen to that, okay? So title's kind of your big first impression. And then after the title, we get into the meats and bones of the abstract, starting with the background section. When you write a background section, you want to make sure you have just this dynamic, catching opening sentence to start off. Because if you don't get their attention in that first sentence or two, then you're going to lose them. Okay, so you want kind of a dynamic opening sentence, and then usually after that, you got about 3 to 4 sentences to guide that reader to that purpose statement. Okay, what is the overall purpose, the aim, the intent of this abstract that you were trying to get across? In those few sentences, talk about why you've conducted this study. What's the why behind it? Why is it so important? And I put an example here. This was something that I just kind of broke down as we're going through. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really only 4 or 5 sentences. So it's not. But this is with my dissertation research. I was submitting this abstract for a systematic review that I was working on with Dr. Robinson at the time. And this was when I was in my coursework. So I kind of got started by just saying air pollution is a major environmental risk factor impacting individuals' health with links to asthma, heart disease, obesity, fetal developmental complications. So boom, hey, air pollution is a problem. And did you know it's linked to all those things? Okay, so hopefully if they can get past that, I gave a few sentences kind of building my case. So particulate matter is one air pollutant that's associated with one's health. And then I talk about congenital heart defects and why they're so bad. And then I tie them together, leading to my overall sentence at the end. Therefore, this review was to determine if there was an association between maternal exposure to this PM2.5 air pollutant during the first trimester of pregnancy and their child being diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. So that's what my research was, and that's what I was looking for in this review. So all those sentences guide me to my overall goal, okay? All right, the next section of your abstract is your methods section. The thing you want to know about your methods section is you want to convey to your reader the how. How did you do this? Okay, and you want the reader to know every bit about how. You don't want them guessing about how they did this study or this project or, this conceptualization of this term. So you want to make sure that the basic design of the study is communicated. You don't want people guessing if this was retrospective or prospective, if it was a quality improvement project, or if it was a quantitative research project. You want to kind of lay out what's the design that's there. Identify your participants, because if I'm skimming literature and my population of interest is pediatric patients, and I see that you're dealing with elder adults, well, then I may not spend my time looking at that article. So you want to be very clear and upfront who your participants are. Identify those key variables, okay? So when I say key variables, if you're doing an intervention, you want to make sure you talk about that intervention and describe it. You know, that we did a physical activity intervention using this survey, or, you know, or this tool, or whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you're not leaving the readers guessing as to what the intervention was that you were doing. If you're not doing an intervention, don't put that you're doing an intervention, but be sure that you describe your outcome measures. So those are like things like, what are you measuring as a result of this project or this research study? What are you trying to define? Is it that you're trying to define a word or build this model, theoretical model? And then you want to throw in your statistical piece in there as well. Some people put their statistical analysis, that just listing the study, the different analyses that you're using. Some people put it in the method, some people put it in the results. It doesn't matter as long as it's in there, one of the two places. But what you want to do in this method section is you want to tell your reader what to expect when they get to that result section. So they should have seen, okay, now this is how they did it. So they're excited to go to the results section and say, okay, now they've done it, what did they find? Okay, so they should all kind of go together. So you notice here, I found 2 examples for this one for you guys. Probably, and I'm just going to say probably, based off of character limits, I left that first one a little lower. But maybe not. Maybe I just didn't write a great abstract, and I'm okay with that. I like to critique my own work sometimes. But you can see how in the first one, I didn't really give as much detail, right? I told that it was Joanna Briggs Institute quantitative systematic review method for search strategies, critical appraisal, and quantitative data extraction. So I told them the design, so it's a systematic review, and then I told them how the findings would be reported. They were reported in narrative form. But I didn't really tell them a whole lot of other stuff, okay? I didn't tell them who my sample was, who I was, focusing on, what were my key variables that I was looking at. So it didn't really give a whole lot of information. And so I put this on here for you to hear that I didn't do every abstract I've written has not been submitted or accepted. But I will say this one was accepted because it was here at our research day on campus, and we had to do it, and that was great. But not for our School of Nursing research. That was the graduate studies research day. But I just want you to see how I can take those same type things and beef it up a little bit, and it gives such a better picture of how I did the study. So this review included epidemiological studies that evaluated infants with congenital heart defects diagnosed in their first year of life. The exposure of interest. So what was I looking at? It was maternal exposure to air pollutant 2.5 during the first trimester, how many databases I searched, what years I needed to include, and then everything else. And then I ended with my effect size, odds ratios, descriptive statistics. There's my statistical piece. So that gives a lot more information than the first one, okay? So just some examples here of how you can get your information portrayed when you include, it seems like you got to include a lot of things, but you can do it really succinctly and really paint a good picture of the review or whatever study it is that you did to get that across in the abstract. All right, the next section is your results section. And I don't know about you guys, but when I don't know if this was something that was I just picked up early on, and I think I've enjoyed doing it. But when I read an abstract, one of the first things I do is I look at the purpose statement, like what is the purpose of this study that I'm looking at? And then I look at the results, because I want to see, did they get anything good? Because if they didn't find anything good, why do I want to keep reading it, right? Unless I'm just really looking for something specific. But I really go to the results section. So those results sections need to catch your attention. That needs to be where you include actual data that relates back to your overall purpose, okay? So you do want to describe your data, your sample, and then you do want to have some frequencies or those numbers there that kind of give your purpose or your outcome variables. But that does not mean in an abstract that you have enough character spaces to write every demographic frequency that you have collected, because you're going to collect a lot of things. Or that you describe every single, if it's qualitative research, I'm not going to write down every question that I asked the participant or every response that I found. I'm going to summarize those into themes and different things like that. So you want to kind of hit the high points. Again, you are trying to suck the reader in. So if you tell them the high points right there, they're going to want to read to go find out more in the actual manuscript, or they're going to want to come to your talk at the conference. If you are able to, utilize those numerical results. So if you've got data that you are presenting in this abstract, make sure you use it. Use those 95% confidence intervals. Use those p-values. Because if you write a confidence interval that doesn't cross 1, or if you write a low enough p-value, then the reader knows that that's statistically significant. So you don't have to spell that out, and that's more characters you get back to write for something else. Okay, so use numbers. Numbers help speak a lot that you don't have to rewrite then in words. Okay, I put some examples again on here because I got 2 for a reason as well. But so you can see the results. I told how many studies I looked at that met the inclusion criteria. Each individual study identified at least one statistically significant increase or inverse association between PM 2.5 and a congenital heart defect. Meta-analysis was done. Here are some findings. And you notice that not one place in here did I say these are non-significant findings, but I'm going to let the reader look at those confidence intervals and realize that they cross the 1 value, so they're non-significant, but I'm not going to say that, right? I just gave them some good numbers to look at to make my case, okay? So I put another one down here for those of you who are continuing to work on projects as we speak. So a lot of times abstracts are submitted well in advance. So SNRS, for instance, is not until the end of February, but we had to have that abstract in if you were not a student, like back in July or August. Like, it was so stinking early. And there may be times that you're not done with your research at the time that you submit it. So this bottom one is an example of when I did submit for my working on this systematic review that I was not done with it. And I just said that, I said further research to conduct critical appraisal and meta-analysis remains in progress. Okay, so I'm not lying. I'm still working on it, and I hope for it to be done when I get there. But so you would just say something like that. The next example, and I can reference Dr. Hargett sitting in the room. So I know this is a lot of stuff on this one slide, so don't critique me for that. But there's 2 things I want to show you about this. Is that not all research is researchy, okay? So educational research, and it's also fun, and it's something that we as faculty, and I'm looking at PhD students, and all my faculty are online, but as faculty, we have a lot of educational research that we can be putting out, okay? And so me and Dr. Hargett got together, and we started trying to figure out how can we use active learning with our students to improve their medication administration. Y'all remember what it was like trying to stand in front of that faculty member and count those pills and stick that needle in that bottle to draw it up. They're shaking the whole time. So we tried to introduce active learning in the classroom so they would be more confident when they got to those checkoffs or when they got to giving it for the first time. Heaven forbid having that student going to give a shot to that patient and they're just, I'm like, give the shot, right? But we have got to find ways to build their confidence. So anyway, active learning, we really found this to be very interesting. But we submitted this to Society of Pediatric Nursing. That conference was in April. This was due in August. We hadn't even started teaching it yet. We didn't teach this till the end of September. So again, this was a way that we could report, and we wrote, results and analysis of this initiative are ongoing and thus not yet complete. We were very honest. But we had the character space that I could also go in there and tell them, however, the authors are hopeful that through the implementation of this education strategy, students will be prepared to be successful on medication calculation tests and gain confidence. So what did we assume that we were going to find? Okay? Now, they didn't know if we ever found this. The only way to know that if we ever found these results was to come listen to our talk or come see our poster at that conference, right? But this is what we were hopeful that we were going to find. So, excuse me. This is another example of how you can do a work in progress. The other thing I want to show you about this was a non-structured abstract, okay? So I don't have it listed as background results or methods, results, discussion. It is just a non-structured, here's some paragraphs put together, getting our point across. So that's kind of the difference there. And then rounding out the elements of our abstract is the conclusion section. And in this last piece of the abstract, you really want to be very concise and straight to the point, like gut punch, like here's my takeaway, take it and run with it, right? So it should be concise. It should be supported by data that's previously reported in the abstract. So if your conclusion statement is talking about outcome variables that you didn't introduce in the methods section, that reader is going to be real confused. So you want to make sure that your conclusion statement is supported by things that you've already said. And here's the kicker, without repeating them, right? Because you don't have the words to be repeating. Okay, 300 words goes real fast. And then if you have the space, give those implications for future research. How is this going to benefit you or the reader if they read this and come hear this talk or read this manuscript? Excuse me. All right. Here's an example, again, of a conclusion statement. So in our analysis, there were no significant evidence to support an association between PM2.5 and a congenital heart defect in the first year of life. Okay, I said it was not significant. However, few studies met the rigorous inclusion criteria, and studies that did had high heterogeneity, making it difficult to complete a meta-analysis on such a limited number. Further research is needed. Okay, so I didn't find anything, but I still think it's important, and this is why. Okay, so non-significant findings are still findings that need to be disseminated. So make sure you say that. All right, so these last few slides, and yes, these are the last few. I think I talk fast. But I'm just going to hit some common mistakes that I saw in the literature that were supported, that people make, that can make writing abstract and getting abstracts accepted difficult, okay? The first one is having an irrelevant topic for the target audience. Remember, I don't want to be talking about simulation and trying to publish it in epidemiology. I don't want to be trying to publish epidemiology at a simulation conference, okay? Make sure it is relevant to the audience and the purpose of what you're trying to hit it for. You do not want a lengthy background section, okay? 3 to 4 sentences, kind of getting your point to that purpose. The reason I say that is because when you get lengthy, you start adding in references, and then people are going to be interested in going and reading somebody else's work, not reading your work, right? Because you're putting in a lot of references and things like that, which you shouldn't do as well. So you don't want to make your background section very lengthy. You want to kind of short, sweet, why I did it, and here's what I did, okay? Citations, there's a lot of places that you do not have to include your citations in your abstracts, okay? So just see the format should, again, be in that call for abstracts, so make sure you look at that to see if those are needed or not. Do not use any undefined abbreviations or acronyms. It may be common sense to you, but it may be not common sense to the reader that is reviewing this abstract. So the first time you use something, make sure you spell it out. Details about statistical methods or software you use. You want to tell them what analyses you used, but don't go into detail. Don't say, I did a t-test between this and this and this and this and this and this. No, no, no. You got the whole method section for that. Just say t-test and descriptive statistics were performed, okay? Don't use that space there. Non-significant results not discussed in the text. So, of course, you saw before on my manuscript or my abstract that I submitted, it was non-significant results. And that's all I found in that systematic review. And so I was able to speak to that, talk to those results and implications. But if you've got non-significant results that you're not speaking to in the actual body of the manuscript, or you're not going to include in your presentation, just leave those out, okay? If you're not going to talk about them in the paper, they don't need to be discussed or referenced in the abstract. And then, of course, leave out personal opinions. While they're great, we want to kind of have our support by literature and relevant things, not our personal opinions here. And then some tips for a successful abstract. Get that call for your abstract and follow it. The planning committee or the editor of that journal is really trying to help you out and tell you what they're looking for. And so get it, follow it, start early and plan ahead. It is not easy to write an abstract. I think these are due January 14th for the School of Nursing. So all you people online, I expect abstracts submitted. But start planning. Don't wait till the 13th and think, oh, let me write this real quick. Because it's not going to read well, it's not going to flow well, it's going to be thrown together, and it's not going to give all the pieces that you truly need in your abstract. If you are writing an abstract off of a manuscript or a finished paper or a finished project, and you've got the whole big thing written out, you want to write your paper first and then write your abstract. Save your abstract for the end. That is saving you some time, okay? Because once you have that big abstract written, or paper written, then you can go in and just kind of pull sentences and sections out. Now, you can't leave them as sentences just pulled from the paper. You got to make them flow together. But it does make it easier when you're writing your abstract after a paper that you write it at the end. And then make sure there's some flow between those sections. Your background section should lead you to your purpose statement, okay? Your methods section should lead you to your results. Your results that you found should lead you to your conclusion, which should ultimately go back and support the overall purpose. So there should be flow amongst everything that is written in your abstract. Be sure, if it is something that you've done in the past, to use past tense. And an active voice, that you as a researcher have done this, okay? And then proofreading is essential, okay? Of course, Grammarly is amazing because I can't spell to save my life. But spelling, punctuation, formatting, have you hit your character limit? And then get somebody who's in the study with you. So when me and Dr. Hargett wrote that abstract, we each read it to make sure it included all the main pieces that we wanted it to include. But then we would also get somebody else who has no idea anything about that study or that project, get them to read it and see if it makes sense to you. See if something's missing. See if they would say, I think you could add a little bit here, or you don't need this. Because having that fresh set of eyes really does help. And so I end with this because I leave my email on here, and I did this talk for the VA last week, and they've got a lot of nurses over there who are really interested in disseminating their work as well. And I thought it was really amazing. So they're like, can we ever email you and let you read one for us? Y'all, I'm telling you, the fishbowl, my name, I'm not a huge expert. But I would love to be an outside reader. If you do have one that you want to say, hey, does this make sense? Does this read well? There's my email. I have tons of time for each of you in here and online to send me those. I would love to give you some feedback. So, does anybody have any questions? Y'all are sweet. Does anybody have any questions about writing an abstract, about any of the sections, what should be included? Anybody online? If you do, you got to speak up because I can't see your comments.
Hey, Katie, this is Sarah Carty. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sarah. Yes.
Hey, I have a quick question. So if I know that something in practice is not being done well, or it can be better, Does that belong in the abstract? Like, I can't find it in the literature, but I know that there is a problem in the practice.
So are you talking about like an abstract that you're writing and you want to kind of give support for why you're doing this study?
Yeah, so just to give you a little detail, like
Yeah.
with my study, these parents get handed this intake form for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and they either click, yes, I want a parent mentor, or they leave it blank. And that's it. Nobody ever follows up with that. They may or may not even receive the form to fill it out. There's just a lot of places where they could miss that opportunity. And I feel like that's important to what I'm looking at with my study, but I'm not going to find that in the literature.
Are you going to add that to your study? Like, is that something that you're going to be including in your study?
I'm not going to be measuring that, but I think that is what makes my study important, is that we just miss a lot of these parents to connect them to a parent mentor.
Yeah, well, I think you could say it just like that without referencing back to, well, this article didn't do it, this article did do it, and things like that. I think you could just, if it gives justification to your purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, then yes, include that.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
I'm
does.
looking at the camera thinking I'm like staring in her eyes. Anybody else online have a question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you help like the first semester students? I mean, I don't have any.
I love first semester students, y'all. I was there. Whew. I'm telling you, it makes me sweat thinking about it. Yes, I would. Yes, I will. Where do you begin? That's a great place. So, do you have you probably just finished a qual paper, a qualitative paper, or a quantitative paper? So, is there something in one of those? Did you have both? I'm looking at y'all. Quantitative paper, yes. Okay, so do you have something in one of those that you could present? Even though you don't have results yet, but could you present a concept that you discussed in qualitative? Or could you present I'm trying to think, I don't know if y'all did it the same way when I went through, did you discuss like a different tradition, each of you, that you had to like go and explore phenomenology or things like that? Could you go and build a poster or an abstract off of phenomenological research that is being done and support that? We may have to talk offline. Oh, Mary Stewart's in the room and she's going to save me.
Well, I'm not, no, you're doing great, you don't need to be saved, but, what came back to me is when I first started doing posters and literally what it was we went to PowerPoint and we made a PowerPoint presentation and then we printed off the slides and then we took those prints and we stuck them on a poster, okay? I mean, and sometimes you actually still see posters like that.
Yes, you do.
About 30 years ago. But if you think about how you break down your presentations that you've done in class, journal club, whatever, you break it down as you're doing like this slide and then you're going to this slide. So it's the same kind of material. You're just taking it and putting it like on a poster or using it as a presentation in a seminar or something. So I think if you go back and look at the guidelines that came, and maybe
I'm sorry to interrupt. We can't hear anything.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry. They didn't tell me that. So
And
Dr.
we were trying to
Stewart was,
put it in the chat box, but then we realized you can't see the chat box.
I can't see child. So Dr. Stewart was just giving some good advice to the PhD students who are in the room that are in their mind thinking, what am I going to put on this poster or this abstract? And so she just said that there's a lot of stuff that they're doing already. And there's a lot of stuff, I'm talking to you faculty now, there's a lot of stuff that you are doing already that you may not see it as a background, a methods, a results, a discussion, but you are doing that. And if you are doing things in your classrooms that are, that are changing nursing practice to ultimately change patient outcomes, then you're doing some type of quality improvement project research. She was just saying that 30 years ago or so, when people used to make posters, they would print out the PowerPoints and they would actually tape the PowerPoints on, printed out PowerPoints on the poster. That's not how it should be done anymore. It is, if you go to some, you may see that every now and then, but that we've gotten away from that. So what you are doing when you present something to students, when you are presenting to colleagues, when you're presenting to different things, you are doing what the same types of things that could be added in this abstract. So I hope that is a good summary. But it was some of the PhD students in the rooms are first semester and thinking, what am I going to submit for an abstract? Because they are going to all be submitting great abstracts for our research day. So, but the call for abstracts has already come out. Dr. Conkle Parker is going to resend that out. If you are just at the place where you don't have data and you're at the place where I don't have an ongoing study, then look at that Format C. There's great ideas for works for progress. There's methodological concepts, and it tells you specifically what is included in each of those. Anybody else have any other?
Just very quickly.
Hold on, how do I make this?
Yourself as a case study. I'm trying to put it in a framework.
Um,
Because think about your own experience as a case study, and that's like what we were talking about with journey papers, and that's what you're presenting. Does that help a little?
So she also said, think of yourself as like a case study. That would be another good way. For some of them do journey papers and qualitative research, which is a lot of fun. If anybody online is interested in going back to school and taking qualitative research. Oh, there you go. I was looking all over for that button. And so it is something that, case studies are even accepted. That's in Format B. So faculty, you may have a case study from a student experience and things like that. So tons of things that you can present at this research day to show the progression of nursing impacting health outcomes. Any other questions? Okay, so the next one of these series is going to be our very own Amy Robertson talking about how to now, you've submitted your abstract, now how do you turn it into a poster? And that was the fun one. I wish I would have gotten that one. But Amy is going to do a much better job than I am. No. And so she's going to talk about that at our next one. And I don't have the date in front of me, but be watching. It's January 27th. So mark your calendars. That is coming up next because we want all these great things at our research day. Any other questions? I'm logging.